My name is Chelsea Ward. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of the day my parents cursed my newborn son when he was only 3 days old. At the time, I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I didn't beg. Because something inside me broke so cleanly that it never healed again. My husband Ethan and I were living in Denver then. We had planned to stay. We had built a life there. But after what happened, I knew I could never raise my child in the shadow of that city, or the people tied to it. We moved, and distance became the only mercy left. The day this happened was August 22nd, 2022. Noah had been in this world for just 3 days. 3 days of fragile breathing. 3 days of learning how to hold him without fear. 3 days of sleepless nights and quiet tears. That morning, around 8 a.m., my in-laws, Thomas and Linda Miller, were sitting beside Noah's crib. They had flown in the moment I went into labor. Linda had cried when she first held him. Actual, shaking tears. Thomas hugged Ethan and said, "You're going to be a great father." I remember thinking how strange it was that a man who wasn't my blood could make me feel more seen than my own father ever had. My parents hadn't called. Not during labor, not after delivery, not once. They had made their silence loud on purpose. Then the door opened. I knew who it was before I turned around. My mother Margaret, my father Harold. They walked in without smiles, without warmth, without a single word. Ethan's hand found mine immediately. I wanted to confront them. I wanted to demand answers. But Ethan squeezed my fingers, just once. "Not now." Linda stood up, still polite despite everything. She smiled and said, "You made it. Come see Noah. He's beautiful." My parents ignored her. They walked straight to the crib. No bending down, no soft voices, no reaching hands. They stared at my son the way people stare at something they've already decided they don't like. Thomas tried to lighten the mood. "He looks just like Chelsea," he said. "Strong nose, bright eyes." For half a second, just half, I hoped. I thought maybe seeing their grandson would soften them. I was wrong. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. I was still weak from childbirth, still sore, still bleeding. But I forced myself to sit up, searching their faces for anything human. That's when my mother spoke. Her voice was calm, cold. "When he grows up," she said, "he'll be a failure, just like his mother." I didn't breathe. Linda gasped. Thomas froze. Ethan's entire body went rigid, and I felt something tear inside my chest. I saw my son's tiny chest rise and fall, unaware that the woman who gave birth to me had just poisoned his future with her words. Tears slid down my face silently. Then I stood. Every instinct in my body screamed protect. I stepped in front of my mother, my hands shaking. "What did you just say?" I asked. "Say it again." She wavered, just slightly. "I'm telling the truth," she muttered. "You're a failure, and so will he be." That was it. The world narrowed. I don't remember grabbing her throat. I remember my hands tightening. I remember screaming. I remember Ethan shouting my name. I remember my father yelling that I was disgraceful. And then I remember Thomas's voice, steady, firm, unafraid. "Chelsea, let go." I looked at him, and in his eyes I didn't see judgment. I saw understanding. I released her. My mother collapsed backward, coughing, gasping, clutching her neck. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Because that's when Linda stepped forward and slapped my mother so hard the sound echoed off the walls. "That," Linda said, her voice ice cold, "was a warning." No one spoke. No one dared. And as my son began to cry, I held him close and knew, with terrifying clarity, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The moment my mother started coughing, the room should have gone quiet in a normal way. Instead, it went quiet like a courtroom right before the verdict. My mother clutched her throat, eyes watery, not from remorse, not from shock at what she'd said, but from the insult of being challenged. My father stepped closer to her like he was shielding a queen who'd just been disrespected. And Linda, my mother-in-law, stood there with her shoulders squared, palm still stinging from the slap she'd delivered. I had never seen her like that. She was usually soft-spoken, warm, the kind of woman who made tea when someone sneezed. But now she looked like the kind of woman who'd bury someone with her own hands if they threatened her family. Noah's cry cut through the silence. I scooped him up carefully, rocking him against my chest, whispering the only thing I could think to say. It's okay, Mommy's here." And the words tasted strange in my mouth because I realized something. I wasn't just calming him. I was promising him something I had never been promised. Protection. My mother wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and glared at Linda. "You hit me," she snapped, voice raspy. "You saw her put her hands on me and you just stood there." She turned on my father. "Harold, are you really going to let your wife be attacked like that? Are you even a man?" My father's face tightened. His jaw worked like he was chewing down anger. But then his eyes darted to Thomas, Linda's husband. Thomas was tall, broad-shouldered. A lifetime of farm work had carved strength into his arms and back. My father's posture shifted, his bravery softened, and that alone told me everything I needed to know about him. He only knew how to be strong when he was sure no one could hit back. Linda took one step closer, her voice calm and deadly. "That slap was a warning," she said. "Curse that baby again, and you'll find out what happens when a mother decides she's done being polite." My mother's eyes widened. For a moment, she looked afraid. Then she recovered fast, because fear is temporary. Pride is permanent. I rocked Noah until his cries softened into shaky hiccups. His tiny fingers curled into my shirt like he was holding on for safety. Ethan stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder, the other clenched into a fist at his side. His jaw was tight, but he didn't speak. He was letting me lead, because he knew this wasn't just about the baby. This was about a lifetime. I looked at my parents, still standing near the crib they hadn't touched, and something cold and steady settled into my bones. "Why?" I asked. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Why did you say that?" My mother scoffed like the answer was obvious. "Because it's true." "No," I said. "Why did you hate us so much that you'd say that about a newborn?" My mother's eyes flicked to Ethan, then to Thomas and Linda, then back to me, and her lip curled. "Because you married into that," she said, like she was spitting out something rotten. "A farming family. People who smell like dirt and call it dignity." Thomas didn't move at first. He just stared at her, and I saw Ethan's fingers twitch at my shoulder, like he wanted to step in. But Thomas finally spoke, and his voice had a pride that made my stomach tighten. "Farming family?" he repeated. "I've been farming for 40 years. I've fed people I'll never meet. I raised my children without stealing from anyone or stepping on anyone." He took a step forward. "And I built our land from 20 acres to nearly 200. My mother laughed, sharp, cutting. "Farmers are still farmers," she said. "No matter how much money you make, you can't change your roots." Linda's breathing changed. I heard it. That sharp inhale people take right before they unleash. But Thomas held up a hand, gently stopping her like he was holding back a storm. Then my father finally spoke. His tone was smug, patronizing. "Chelsea," he said, like he was disappointed in a child. "You should know what kind of family you come from. You disgraced our name marrying into poverty." The word poverty hit like a slap. I blinked. Then I laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Poverty?" I repeated. "Do you even hear yourself?" I shifted Noah in my arms, careful, then looked my father straight in the eye. "Thomas and Linda gave us access to land worth millions," I said. "They've offered help you never once offered me." My parents froze. My mother's mouth opened slightly. "No," she whispered, like she couldn't accept it. "That's not possible." "It is," I said. "And that's the difference between you and them." The room was so silent I could hear Noah's tiny breath. Then I let the knife twist. "And what have you given me, Mom?" I asked. "Besides shame, besides threats, besides the feeling that I've never been enough unless I obey you?" Her face flushed red. "After everything we've done for you." "What?" I cut in. "Tell me. Say it out loud. What have you done for me besides control me?" My father's nostrils flared, his eyes narrowed, and my mother's voice rose like a siren. "I should have stopped you from marrying him," she hissed. "I tried, but you refused. You chose them over your own blood." I took a breath. Slow. Careful. Then I said the words that made Ethan's hand tighten on my shoulder. "From now on," I told them, "you will never see Noah again." My mother went still, like she couldn't process what she'd heard. Then she snapped. "I'll cross your name out of the will," she spat. "You won't get a cent from our assets." There it was. The weapon she always reached for. Money. Power. Control. I felt something inside me, not break this time. It hardened. I looked her dead in the eye. "Do it," I said softly, "because if the price of your inheritance is letting you curse my child, then I don't want it." My father stepped forward, voice sharp. "You'll regret this." And that's when I smiled. Not happy, not triumphant, just certain. "I don't know if I'll regret it," I said, "but I promise you'll regret what you've done first." My mother's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" I turned slightly so Noah's face was tucked safely into my chest. Then I looked at them both and spoke like I was reading a sentence. "I gave you 30 days, I said. 30 days to pay back the $25,000 you borrowed from me in 2018. My mother's face twisted. "We don't owe you anything," she snapped immediately. I didn't blink. "Yes, you do," I said. "And if you want to pretend you don't, then we can let a judge explain it." The word judge changed the air. My father stiffened. My mother's lips parted. And I could see it, the first flicker of panic. Because they weren't used to consequences. They were used to me folding. Linda stepped beside me and touched my arm lightly. Not to stop me, to steady me, like she was saying, "Go ahead, finish it." So I did. I have the documents, I said. I have the texts. I have the bank transfers. I leaned forward slightly. Now get out, I whispered, before I lose my mind again. My father looked like he wanted to argue. But then Thomas moved. He didn't hit anyone. He didn't shout. He simply clasped his hands together, rolled his neck like he was warming up, and took a step forward. That was all. My father's courage evaporated. He grabbed my mother's arm and pulled her toward the door. My mother spun once at the threshold, eyes full of hate, pure, raw hate, like she wanted to carve my face into her memory forever. This isn't over, she hissed. And I believed her, because people like her never accept endings. They only accept victories. When the door shut, the room didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow. I sank back onto the bed with Noah against my chest. Ethan crouched beside me, pressing his forehead to mine. You did the right thing, he whispered. My throat burned. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, doing the right thing still hurt like hell. Linda came over and wrapped her arms around me carefully, mindful of the baby. You're not alone, she said into my hair. Not anymore. Thomas nodded once, his eyes gentle but firm. You protected your family, he said. That's what matters. For a moment, I almost let myself breathe. Almost. Then Noah made a tiny sound, a little puff of air. A newborn fart. Soft. Ridiculous. And somehow, it broke the tension like a thread snapping. Linda laughed first. Then Ethan. Then Thomas, shaking his head with a smile. Even I laughed, wiping tears off my cheeks with trembling fingers. It was the first laughter of the day, and it felt like a small patch of sunlight through a cracked window. 3 days later, I left the hospital. We brought Noah home. I thought the storm had passed. But storms don't stop just because you close the door. Sometimes they wait outside. And that night, around 7 p.m., there was a knock at our front door. Hard. Demanding. Like whoever stood there believed they still owned me. Ethan looked at me, and I already knew. Because only one kind of person knocks like that. Family. The knock came again. Louder this time. Not a polite request. A demand. I felt it in my spine before I even moved, like my body already knew what my mind was still trying to deny. Ethan stood up immediately. I'll handle it, he said. No, I replied, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. I will. I laid Noah gently into his crib. He stirred, made a soft sound, then settled again, unaware that the world outside that room was about to try to tear itself back into our lives. I kissed his forehead once. A promise. Then I walked to the door. I opened it just enough to step outside and pulled it closed behind me. The porch light illuminated 3 familiar faces. My parents. And my older sister, Rachel Ward. 4 years older than me. 4 years favored over me. The golden child. Her arms were crossed. Her expression already tired, like this was an inconvenience she'd been forced to deal with. My mother stood behind her, eyes red but sharp. My father's face was tight with anger. Rachel was the first to speak. Chelsea, this is ridiculous, she said, exhaling like she was already exhausted. You've taken this too far. I folded my arms. Funny, I said. That's exactly what Mom said before she cursed my baby. Rachel winced. Just a little. But she didn't deny it. That wasn't what she meant, Rachel replied quickly. She was emotional. You know how she is. I stared at her. You're defending her? I asked. After what she said? Rachel shrugged. She didn't actually mean it. She was angry. Something hot crawled up my throat. She looked into my son's crib, I said slowly, and called his future a failure. Rachel rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Chelsea, he's a baby. Words don't matter at that age. That sentence did it. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was horrifying. My mother stepped forward, emboldened. You see? She snapped. Rachel understands. She's always been more reasonable than you. Of course. I felt my hands clench. Of course she does, I said. You raised her too. Rachel sighed again. This loan thing, she gestured vaguely, you need to drop it. Suing our parents? Are you trying to destroy the family? I raised an eyebrow. Family? I echoed. Is that what you call cursing a newborn? Rachel shook her head. You're twisting things. Mom and Dad are old. They say stupid things. You don't burn everything down over words. I leaned against the porch railing. And yet, I said calmly, you burned bridges with Aunt Melissa over a single comment about your wedding dress. Rachel flushed. That was different. How? I asked. Because it was about you? Silence. My father stepped in, his voice low and warning. You don't talk to your sister like that. I turned to him slowly. You don't talk about my child like that, I replied. My mother's face hardened. She deserved it, she spat suddenly, pointing toward the house. That child is cursed because of the family you married into. That was it. The line. I felt something click into place inside me, like a door slamming shut. Leave, I said quietly. Rachel blinked. What? Leave, I repeated. All of you. Rachel scoffed. Chelsea, be serious. I am, I said. I don't want you on my property. My mother's voice rose sharply. You can't cut off family like this. I already did, I replied. Rachel stepped closer, her voice turning pleading. Listen to me, she said. You know Mom and Dad won't pay that money back unless you scare them. They don't have it just lying around. I tilted my head. Really? I asked. Because when I needed help during college, you told me money didn't grow on trees. Rachel's jaw tightened. That was different. Always different. Always excused. You want me to forgive Mom? I asked. Then you forgive someone who curses your child. Rachel opened her mouth. Closed it. She couldn't. Because she knew. She just didn't want to say it. My father stepped forward, eyes cold. This ends now, he said. You'll regret humiliating us like this. I didn't flinch. I didn't humiliate you, I said. You humiliated yourselves. I reached for my phone. I'm calling the police, I added calmly. Rachel's eyes widened. Are you insane? No, I said. I'm done. That did it. My father grabbed my mother's arm again. Let's go, he snapped. My mother resisted, pointing at the door. You'll regret this, Chelsea, she hissed. When you need us. When you have nothing. I met her gaze. I already know what it's like to have parents who don't love me, I said. I survived it. They stared at me. Then Rachel shook her head in disbelief. I can't believe you, she muttered. You've changed. I smiled faintly. Yes, I said, I have. They left. The porch fell silent except for the hum of the streetlight. I stood there longer than necessary, watching their car disappear down the road. It felt like something else disappeared with it. Something old. Something painful. Something I had carried my entire life. Inside, Ethan had been listening. Linda and Thomas were sitting in the living room, their faces tight with concern. As soon as I stepped in, Linda stood up and wrapped me in a hug. You were strong, she whispered. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. Ethan took my hand and squeezed it gently. You don't owe them anything, he said. I nodded. Then the tears came. Quiet. Ugly. Exhausted. Not because I missed them, but because I finally accepted I never really had them. That night I couldn't sleep. Noah slept peacefully. Ethan slept beside me. But I sat alone in the dim light of my home office, staring at my laptop. On the screen was a video file. The hospital footage. 15 minutes. Unedited. Every word. Every curse. Every threat. Every slap. Every truth. My finger hovered over the mouse. Once this went out, there would be no going back. I whispered to myself, if I stay silent, they'll do this again. To someone else. I clicked upload and titled it, What would you do if your parents cursed your 3-day-old baby? I shut the laptop, and for the first time since giving birth, I slept. The next morning at 9 a.m., my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, voicemails from my parents, from Rachel, from numbers I hadn't seen in years. I blocked them all. Then I checked the notifications. My post was spreading. Fast. Too fast. Thousands of reactions. Hundreds of comments. Shares climbing by the second. I scrolled, hands shaking, and realized something chilling. Not one person defended my parents. Not a single one. The world had seen what I'd lived with my entire life. And now, they couldn't hide anymore. But the real consequences? They were only just beginning. I didn't even make coffee that morning. I sat at the kitchen table in the half-light of dawn. Noah asleep in his bassinet nearby. My phone vibrating nonstop like it was alive. Missed calls, voicemails, messages stacked so high they blurred together. Mom, Dad, Rachel, aunts, uncles, numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. I didn't read a single message. I already knew what they were saying. Take it down. You went too far. You embarrassed us. Think about the family. They always wanted me to think about the family, just never about myself. Ethan came into the kitchen quietly, wrapping an arm around my shoulders from behind. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded, even though my chest felt tight. I don't regret it, I said. I just didn't expect it to spread this fast. He glanced at my phone screen. The numbers were still climbing. Thousands of reactions. Hundreds of comments. Shares ticking upward like a countdown. They can't control it anymore, he said. That's what they're scared of. I swallowed. Because he was right. I finally opened the comments. The first one I saw was from a high school classmate I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. I watched the whole thing. I'm shaking. Cursing a newborn is unforgivable. Chelsea, I'm so sorry you grew up with that. Another, this is why people cut off family. Blood doesn't excuse abuse. Another from someone who lived near my parents. I've known your parents for 20 years. Never imagined they were capable of this. Shameful. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. The most shocking part wasn't the anger. It was the absence of defense. No, she didn't mean it. No, parents make mistakes. No, family is family. Not one person stood up for them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the problem. By noon, my parents' names were being tagged everywhere. Neighbors were sharing the video. Community groups reposted it. Someone even slowed the clip down and added captions to my mother's words, freezing them in place like a scar that would never fade. Ethan's phone buzzed. Then Linda's. Then Thomas's. Linda looked at me carefully. "Your mother called," she said. I didn't answer. I nodded. "Thank you." Linda hesitated, then added, "People like her, they only understand consequences." She was right, and those consequences were coming fast. Over the next few days, I heard things through people I barely spoke to anymore. My mother stopped leaving the house. When she did, neighbors stared. Some whispered. Some didn't bother lowering their voices. My father had been removed from 2 community groups he'd been part of for years. Invitations dried up overnight. Respect, something he had always wielded like a badge, evaporated. They were known now, not as pillars, but as a warning. They had sown the wind, and the whirlwind didn't miss. 20 days after I sent the repayment notice, I got an alert from my bank. $25,000 deposited. No note, no apology, just fear. Shortly after, a letter arrived. Official, legal, cold. My parents' lawyer informed me that I had been formally disowned and removed from the will. I read it once, then set it down. I felt nothing, because you can't lose something you never truly had. That night, I sat beside Noah's crib, watching him sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell steadily, peacefully, unaware that his existence had destroyed illusions decades in the making. "I chose you," I whispered. And for the first time in my life, that choice felt free. A week later, Linda and Thomas sat us down. "We have a rental house in Portland," Thomas said gently. "The lease just ended." Linda smiled. "If you want it, it's yours. No rent." I cried. Not because of money, but because love like that had never come with strings. 2 months later, we moved. New city, new home, new life. And when I stood in that doorway holding my son, I realized something quietly powerful. I hadn't destroyed my family. I had finally chosen one. But life has a way of circling back. And 3 years later, the past knocked again. Not at my door, but through a phone call. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I last heard my parents' voices. 3 years since I stopped flinching when my phone rang. 3 years since peace stopped feeling unfamiliar. Noah was 3 now. Healthy, loud, curious in the way only children who feel safe are. He talked nonstop about bugs in the garden, about why the moon followed the car, about whether tomatoes were vegetables or fruit and why that mattered so much. Every morning, he ran straight into Linda's arms like she was oxygen. Every afternoon, Thomas lifted him onto his shoulders and walked him through the rows of plants, explaining things Noah didn't fully understand yet, but listened to anyway, eyes wide. "This one grows slow," Thomas would say, pointing to a vine. "But slow doesn't mean weak." I always noticed that. The lessons hidden in the everyday. Portland gave us something Denver never could. Distance. Safety. Space to heal. Our house wasn't big, but it was full. No raised voices. No insults disguised as concern. No love that came with conditions. Ethan thrived here. So did I. We weren't pretending anymore. We were living. One night, after Noah fell asleep, clutching a stuffed bear Linda had sewn herself, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Something in my chest tightened. I answered. "Chelsea," a familiar voice said. Uncle Thomas. My father's younger brother. We hadn't spoken since before everything fell apart. His voice sounded older, worn down. "Hey," I said cautiously. There was a pause. Then he sighed. "I didn't want to call," he admitted, "but I thought you should know." I leaned back against the counter. "Know what?" Another pause. Then the words came out slow. "Your parents lost everything." I closed my eyes. Not from shock. From inevitability, Uncle Thomas explained. Over the years after I left, my parents had put their faith and their finances into Rachel's husband's business ideas. Loans, mortgages, promises of big returns. None of it real. The house had been mortgaged, then remortgaged, then defaulted. Rachel and her husband disappeared when things collapsed. Divorce followed. My parents were left with debt, shame, and nothing to show for it. They sold the house at a loss before foreclosure. After paying the bank, they had $50,000 left. Now they lived in a cramped rental, surviving on a thin pension. Uncle Thomas' voice cracked slightly. "They're old now," he said. "This isn't how they should be living." I listened. Quiet. Calm. Removed. "Chelsea," he continued, "they're your parents. They made mistakes, but they're paying for them. Don't you think it's time to forgive?" There it was. The question people always ask the survivor. Not what did they do to you, but why won't you forget it? I took a breath. "No," I said. The word felt solid. Final. Uncle Thomas sighed. "You're being cruel." I stared at the wall, memories flickering like old film. My mother's voice in the hospital, my father's silence. Rachel's dismissal, the curse, the slap, the threats, the disownment. No, I repeated, colder this time. I'm being consistent. They're miserable, he pressed. They chose that, I replied, long before I walked away. Another pause. Longer. Then he said quietly, "You'll regret this." I felt nothing. "This will be the last time we talk," I said. "Goodbye." And I hung up. Ethan found me sitting there afterward. He didn't ask questions. He just wrapped his arms around me. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded. Because I was. I truly was. That night I watched Noah sleep. I thought about the word cruel. How easily it's thrown at people who stop accepting abuse. I whispered into the quiet room, "I will never teach you that love means enduring pain." And I knew I meant it. Some people think forgiveness is a door you must open. They're wrong. Sometimes forgiveness is simply choosing not to reopen the wound. I didn't wish my parents harm. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I just didn't go back. And that was enough. Years passed. Noah grew. Laughter filled our home. The past stayed where it belonged. Behind us. Because family isn't where you're born. It's where you're safe. And I finally understood something my younger self never could. Choosing peace is not cruelty. It's survival. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been told you're heartless for setting boundaries, remember this. Protecting your child, your partner, and your sanity is not abandonment. It's courage.